We spend billions on reforestation every single year. Governments launch campaigns. Corporations pledge to plant 100 million trees. School children fill nurseries with seedlings, and most of it fails. The survival rates for conventional tree planting projects hover between 10 and 20%. That means for every 10 trees we plant, 8 or 9 of them die. We dig holes, drop in fragile nursery-raised seedlings, maybe water them a few times, and then walk away. And when those seedlings shrivel in the heat, or get ripped apart by wind, or simply dry out because nobody came back with a truck full of water, we call it a tragedy of climate change. We call it desertification. We call it inevitable. But it is not inevitable. Because right now, in some of the harshest land on the face of this planet, techniques developed by African farmers and refined over decades are achieving survival rates above 90%, with zero supplemental irrigation, and almost nobody in the Western gardening or reforestation world is talking about them. The question here is not whether these methods work. The science on that is settled. The question is why they are not being taught everywhere. Let's start with the problem, because the scale of failure in conventional reforestation is staggering. During the 1970s and the 1980s, as famine tore through Africa's Sahel region, millions of dollars poured into tree planting programs. Nurseries were built. Exotic species were imported. Seedlings were planted by the tens of thousands. And according to the World Resources Institute, writing in 2008, there was little overall impact. The trees died, the money vanished, the desert kept advancing. The core problem is brutally simple. We take a fragile seedling that has been coddled in a nursery with regular water and controlled conditions, and we drop it into hostile ground where temperatures can crack 50 degrees, where rain might not fall for 8 months, where the soil is so compacted that water sheets off the surface instead of soaking in. And then we expect that seedling to survive on willpower and the occasional visit from a watering truck. In the Sahel, 74% of rangelands and 61% of rain-fed croplands have been damaged by moderate to very severe desertification. In some African countries, deforestation rates exceeded planting rates by 300 to 1. 300 trees cut down for every one planted. That is not a reforestation effort. That is a rounding error. Now here is where the story turns. In the 1980s, an Australian agricultural economist named Tony Rinaudo was working in Niger. He had been part of those conventional tree planting programs. He had watched seedling after seedling die. And one day, driving across what appeared to be barren, lifeless desert, he noticed something that everyone else had dismissed. Beneath the surface, the stumps and root systems of trees that had been cut down years ago were still alive. They were sending up shoots, small green stems pushing through the dirt, only to be slashed and burned by farmers every season because the regrowth was considered useless bush. The existing indigenous vegetation was being systematically destroyed by the very people who needed it most. And to a casual observer, to the aid workers and government foresters flying in from overseas, the land looked like it was turning irreversibly to desert. But Rinaudo saw something different. He saw an underground forest, waiting. His insight was deceptively simple. Each of those living stumps could produce 10 to 30 stems. Instead of slashing them all, what if you selected the 3 to 5 tallest, straightest stems, pruned away the rest, and let them grow? No nursery, no irrigation, no imported species. Just stop destroying what was already there and give it a chance. He called the approach Farmer-Managed Natural Regeneration, and it worked. It worked so well that by 2004, the technique was being practiced across more than 5 million hectares, covering 50% of Niger's farmland. That is an average reforestation rate of 250,000 hectares per year, sustained over 20 years. Chris Rage of the World Resources Institute called it probably the largest positive environmental transformation in the Sahel, and possibly all of Africa. By 2018, 6 million hectares had been regenerated, 240 million trees, The reforestation was so extensive it was visible from satellite images taken from space, and the cost was essentially zero. No nurseries to build, no irrigation systems to install, no expensive inputs to purchase. The poorest farmers on Earth could learn the technique simply by watching their neighbors. It works because those root systems are already established. They have spent years adapting to the local soil, the local rainfall patterns, the local pests. You are not fighting nature. You are cooperating with it. But farmer-managed natural regeneration is only one piece of this story. In Burkina Faso, a farmer named Yacouba Sawadogo was developing something equally revolutionary. The technique is called Zai, and it predates Sawadogo, but he refined it and proved what it could do at a scale that stunned the world. The method works like this. During the dry season, you dig small pits, 15 to 50 centimeters across and 5 to 15 centimeters deep, spaced about 80 centimeters apart. You fill them with manure and compost. The manure attracts termites, whose tunnels break up the compacted soil further, creating channels for water and air to penetrate. Then, you wait for rain. When the rains come, instead of sheeting off the hard-packed surface and running away, the water collects in those pits. It pools, it soaks in, it feeds the roots of whatever you have planted exactly where they need it. Zero supplemental watering. The pits harvest rainwater passively. And the results are extraordinary. Zai holes increase yields of trees, sorghum, and millet by up to 500%. From the mid-1980s to 2009, water table levels in Zai-treated areas rose by about 5 meters on average and as much as 17 meters in some locations. The water was not just feeding individual plants, it was recharging the aquifer. Sawadogo personally used this method to create a 62-acre forest from what had been barren desert. He called it Bangar Raga, meaning forest of wisdom in the Mossi language. It is visible on satellite imagery. A green island in a sea of dust, built by one man with a hoe and a pile of compost. Sawadogo won the 2018 Right Livelihood Award, known as the Alternative Nobel Prize, and the United Nations Champions of the Earth Award in 2020. When he died in December 2023, he was widely mourned as the man who stopped the desert. There is more. The Zai pits are often combined with a technique called cordons pierreux, also called stone lines. You lay thin rows of fist-sized stones across fields along the contour lines of the land. The stones catch silt carried by rain and create small dams where soil can accumulate. Stone placement follows the shape of the land to slow runoff and trap sediment. When it rains, silt pushed across the surface builds up against the stones. The stones slow the flow of water, giving it more time to soak in. The accumulated silt creates fertile spots where seeds of local plants sprout naturally. Those plants slow water even further, and their roots break up compacted soil. Combined with Zai pits, this creates a self-reinforcing cycle of soil regeneration. No external inputs needed, no machinery, no chemicals, just stones and dirt and an understanding of how water moves across a landscape. And then there is the tree itself, Faidherbia albida, known as the apple ring acacia, or Gao in Hausa. This is a keystone species across the Sahel, and its biology reads like it was engineered for exactly this problem. It exhibits what scientists call reverse-phenology. It drops its leaves during the rainy season, precisely when crops planted beneath it need maximum sunlight. Then it leafs out during the dry season, providing shade and fodder when nothing else is available. That leaf drop during the wet season means the tree does not compete with crops for light, and as those leaves fall, they contribute nitrogen and organic matter directly to the soil. Faidherbia fixes atmospheric nitrogen through root nodules, enriching the ground around it. Crop yields under its canopy can double or triple compared to open fields. Its deep taproot makes it extraordinarily drought-resistant, thriving in areas with as little as 250 millimeters of annual rainfall. Integrating this tree into farming systems is not a new idea. Farmers across the Sahel have known about it for generations. What is new is the scientific documentation confirming just how effective it is. Modern engineering has also entered this space, applying the same underlying principles. A Dutch inventor named Peter Hoff, a former flour exporter, developed the Groasis Waterboxx, a polypropylene bucket device inspired by biomimicry. The lid collects rainwater and nighttime dew through condensation, stores it in a reservoir, and releases approximately 50 milliliters per day to the seedling through a wick using capillary action. It shields the soil surface from evaporation and stabilizes temperature and humidity around the young plant. Tested at Mohammed Premier University in Morocco, nearly 90% of plants survived with the Waterboxx, compared to 10% without. Zero supplemental watering. The device also inoculates soil with mycorrhizal fungi, making otherwise chemically inaccessible nutrients available to the plant. A biodegradable version called the Groaboxx decomposes over time and becomes food for the tree itself. This is what happens when modern engineering meets ancient principles, not replacing them, validating them. So why are these methods not being taught in every agricultural school, every forestry program, every gardening course on the planet? The answers are uncomfortable. Start with colonial history. In Niger, forestry laws dating back to the 1930s under French colonial rule stripped tree ownership from farmers and handed it to the government. If you did not own the trees on your land, you had zero incentive to protect them, let alone nurture their regrowth. Those laws persisted until 1993. When farmers were finally given ownership rights, reforestation exploded. Decades of progress were delayed by a legal framework designed to extract, not to sustain. Then look at the economics of international development. Aid organizations, governments, and non-governmental organizations consistently favor expensive, technology-heavy, imported solutions over low-cost indigenous knowledge. Farmer-Managed Natural Regeneration costs almost nothing, and that is precisely the problem. There is no product to sell, no contract to award, no consulting fee to charge, and no photogenic ribbon-cutting ceremony. For decades, the existing indigenous vegetation in these landscapes was dismissed as worthless scrub. Exotic species were planted in fields that contained living stumps of indigenous trees. Those living stumps were barely acknowledged, let alone seen as important. This was an enormous oversight driven by institutional blindness and by arrogance. Conventional reforestation is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Tree planting campaigns are photogenic, fundraisable, and quantifiable. A headline that says, "We planted 1 million trees" sounds great. A headline that says, "We stopped cutting down existing regrowth" does not. Consider Africa's Great Green Wall, the continent's signature reforestation initiative, a $33 billion project spanning 8,000 kilometers across the width of Africa. As of 2023, only about 18% of its target had been restored. There were unfulfilled funding promises, poor coordination between countries. Some nations did not allocate a single dollar of domestic budget. Some experts called for scrapping it entirely. Meanwhile, Farmer-Managed Regeneration spread quietly across 5 million hectares in Niger alone, without any of that top-down machinery, without the conferences, without the consultants, without the satellite offices and the branded land cruisers. What can the rest of the world learn from this? Work with existing roots, not against them. Before you clear weeds or brush from a piece of land, consider what is already alive underground. Harvest water passively. Sunken planting beds, berms, swales, and mulch basins replicate Xi principles in any climate. Use nitrogen-fixing trees as companions in your growing systems. Reduce evaporation instead of increasing watering. Shield the soil surface from the sun with mulch, stones, wood chips, or living ground cover. Inoculate with mycorrhizal fungi when transplanting into poor soils. And above all, understand that the best reforestation is the tree that is already there. Protecting existing growth is cheaper, faster, and more effective than planting new seedlings. A Burkina Faso farmer with no formal education created a 62-acre forest in the desert. An Australian agronomist helped regenerate 240 million trees across 6 million hectares. They did not do it with billion-dollar budgets or proprietary technology. They did it by paying attention to what was already there. The 92% survival rate is not magic. It is not some secret locked away in a laboratory. It is what happens when you stop fighting the ecosystem and start cooperating with it. These methods are free. They are proven. The science backing them stretches back decades. The only thing standing between these techniques and the rest of the world is the willingness to listen to the people who developed them. The real question, the one that should keep every reforestation planner and every aid director and every gardening educator awake at night, is how much longer are we going to keep ignoring what works?